Hey, what's going on, guys? Mark here. Just checking in, CEO of Enter Sky Entrepreneurial, Enter Sky Inc., Enter Sky LLC, and the Susie Dog Foundation. Today's video is basically going to be about how you can determine your retirement number. Now, a lot of people have different retirement numbers based off of their own personal circumstances, so I'm just going to use my own personal circumstance on what my retirement number is. So I've talked about this in other videos specifically to what my number is and how I got to that number. So I'm just going to do some quick math. I'll share my screen and I'll show you how you can do that. So there's this formula you can use it's taught in finance classes that is great for determining your retirement number. So obviously, first things first, you're going to want to get a calculator of some kind or something. Pretty simple. You don't need a very expensive one to do anything. So I'll show you my history so you can kind of see what I'm doing here on the left or the right, I mean. So one of the first things you want to do is kind of pick out what your monthly expenses are. So I will show you what my expenses were a couple months ago. Let's see if I have them. Doesn't look like I have it. I got rid of it. Anyways, simple thing you can do, just kind of figure out your expenses. So I know personally my expenses are $2,400 a month. In Arizona, that's really, really, really cheap. I'll probably end up making a video about this later, but I'm the type of person that deals in the philosophy of, if you keep your income low, and you cut expenses like going out to eat and stuff, it really creates a very toxic environment for yourself. It's a lot like eating poorly, right? If you go out to eat all the time, it's very hard to break that habit. And so once you stop, going out to eat every day, you eventually end up even worse and splurging 2 or 3 times a day. So what I have figured out is that I need to cut my fixed expenses. My fixed expenses are stuff like rent, car insurance, car payments, stuff that have long-term liabilities. So housing expenses, um, car expenses, gas expenses, stuff like that. Stuff that I have predominantly a lot of control over. I like to cut those expenses down because those are expenses or liabilities that are easy to cut down. For instance, I don't go out anytime I buy a new car every 5 to 7 years, I don't go out and buy the brand new car right off the lot, the 2021 when it's 2021 year car. It's got all the bells and whistles of things that I could possibly need. I buy something that's 2 to 3 years older, has, been used enough, but not too much so that it's damaging. And I put, I'll trade in the last car that I had or put money down. And this usually reduces my monthly expense for that car payment to, half of what, if not a quarter of what the new car was. And it's just as reliable, in my personal opinion. So currently I drive a Nissan 2015 Sonata. It's our Nissan Sentra, I mean. Before that, I had a Hyundai Sonata. They were both 5 years old when I bought them. That's about the range that I like to stick in with my cars because they're usually below 75,000 miles, and my payments are like $100. So my payment every month for my car payment is $100. So that's just how I like to view my expenses. Another thing you can do too is like living somewhere a lot cheaper. Obviously, where you live in terms of what you spend on rent is directly correlated to how safe an environment is, especially in places like Phoenix or Mesa, Arizona. If you live in a very dangerous area, your rent's going to be a lot cheaper. But if you live in a very modest area where, let's say, rent's $950, you're not going to have bad crime, but it's not going to be, it's going to be bearable, I think. Um, Obviously, that's up to you, but personally, I don't like to spend over $1,000 a month after it's all said and done to include all of my utility expenses in a place that I live in, because I think it's a waste of time, money, and energy. So going back to this, what I did is I ended up taking my expenses and I added them together, and then I also added an additional like $300 or $400, and then I just multiplied it by 12. Super simple. $28,000 and $800. That's how much I spent in a year. So I figured I'll just round that up to $30,000. So I just rounded it up to $30,000 a year, and then I added $12,000 for one kid. I figured if I have one or two kids, it's $6,000 a kid, $12,000. I'm 27 now, so obviously not planning on having kids anytime soon, but in the near future, when I do want kids, they're a 20-year commitment. So then what you do is you multiply it by 1.03 to the 20th power, right? And that's how much money I'm going to need to make a year. Obviously, going to have to get rid of the decimal places or whatever, but it's basically just 75K a year, right? That's my retirement number. That's how much money I need to make every year to make enough money to live off of. And the reason I multiplied it by 1.03 to the 20th power is because that's actually the future value of an annuity formula. And what that basically says is the one is just basically 42,000 times itself, or times one. So that's how you would normally do it. But the future value of an annuity is basically saying that if living expenses increased 3% in accordance with inflation every single year for the next 20 years, then this is how much a $42,000 salary would need to, or $42,000 would be in 20 years from now. So basically, if I had $42,000 today, 20 years from now, if inflation increased at a 3%, annual increase, it would be $75,000 or $76,000 a year. That's how much $42,000 would be worth in 20 years from now. So that's how I personally created my retirement number. Now, what that basically says is if I divide that by 12, that's how much money I need to make every single month in order to have that's how much passive income I have to have every single month in order to retire and not have to work. If I wanted to retire and when I'm turned 47, that's how much money I have to make every single month in order to retire at 47. So I'll do some quick math. I'll multiply this back by 12. I'll just clear this out and say it's $76,000 a year because it's easier. And then I'll show you, I'll give you a little extra information. So I currently have 25 units. I have a 13 unit, and then I have 3 fourplexes that I have throughout Texas that I'm currently own. I also have some other properties in New Mexico and some in Utah, but I don't really count those because of the way that the asset is designed. And I'll get into that some other time. But for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to concentrate on my passive income rentals located in Central Texas. So that's 25 doors. I know every month right now I'm making $2,500 a month a door. So if you do some quick math, you say it's $2,500 a door times 12. That's $30,000 a year just in passive income alone. Right now, without having any kids, I basically break even on my expenses and I make just enough in my passive income to afford my annual expenses. But if I went ahead and I said, okay, I divide that by 25 doors, that's how much I'm making a year per door. So if you divide that by 12, I'm making $100 a door right now. just in passive income, I'm making $100 a door. So let's say that I wanted to make $72,000 a year or $76,000 a year. Well, how many doors would I need to afford that? Well, okay, so if I average right now $100 a door, and I need to, and I know that I'm assuming that rental rates are fixed, and they're not. They increase on average 3% annually every year to follow directly correlated with. They're directly correlated, and they follow inflation. If you're a property manager or a landlord or someone that has rentals, and you need to increase your rents by at least 3% every year because it has to follow inflation. And inflation is hyper increased, or we experience hyperinflation. I'm sorry. If we experience hyperinflation, then you need to take into consideration that you're gonna have to do shorter lease terms every three to 6 months so you can follow hyperinflation, because otherwise you get fucked. And you'll lose out on that increase in cash flow. But if you have a fixed rate mortgage, that doesn't really matter, because your mortgage is going to follow whatever it was prior to the hyperinflation. So that's just an interesting thing to think about. But if you figure you need to make $76,000 a year in passive income 20 years from now to break even on your expenses, that's assuming you still have 2 kids with you. Well, what you do is you basically divide that by 12, or you don't divide that by 12. I'm sorry. You divide that by $100, and then that's going to tell you how many doors you need. So what you do is you divide 76,000 divided by 100, and that's going to tell you how many doors you need. So basically, I'm going to need 76 doors total if I'm making $100 a door, to determine, to accumulate that $76,000 a year. Now, another way you can look and you can view this, or I'm sorry, I actually did that incorrectly. So 76,000 divided by 12 gets you your monthly cash flow. Then you divide that by 100. That's going to tell you how many doors you need in total to actually maintain your annual income of $76,000. So I'm going to need about 64 doors to acquire $76,000 in passive income. So my goal would be over the next 10 years, 20 years, to acquire assets that produce positive income. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is getting an FHA loan or something like that to do that. And I'll focus predominantly on. I'm going to focus predominantly on fourplexes or multifamily, small multifamily units. So, like I said, all of my current properties, or my rental properties at least, are fourplexes and then a 13 unit complex. And the reason I like fourplexes and I don't like duplexes and I don't like triplexes, the reason I like fourplexes and up, are specific, or for really obvious reasons, I feel like, but a lot of people don't actually understand. The reason duplexes and triplexes typically don't work is because they're a good place to start as an investor, but mathematically they usually don't make sense. Specifically in Central Texas, where I buy a lot of my properties, the typical duplex right now is going for about $150,000. Okay, so if you take your $150,000 and you figure your monthly payment is on that's about $750, right? So $750 a month. That includes typically your property taxes and insurance. So $12, that's how much you make a month. And you figure each door makes, it's about $650 right now is what their market's making. So you multiply that times 2. Oh, shoot. So 650 times 2, making $1,300 a month. On a $150,000 home, your mortgage, your principal and interest alone are just $750. Then you have property taxes, which on a property like that runs you about $3,500 a year, and your insurance usually runs you about $2,500 a year. So you figure 750 times 12 plus 3,500 plus the say for simple math, $1,500 or $15,000 a year is what your pity payment is. So you divide that by 12, or multiply it by 12. I'm sorry. Then you divide it by 12. Okay, so you're making your expenses right now, just in your expenses, just in your debt coverage, is $1,250, right? You also have property management fees. If you don't live there, you have property management fees. It can range anywhere between 6 to 10%. I pay 10% on mine because I don't have a substantial portfolio in that for that property manager, and they're the only ones that are actually any good in that state. So I pay a little bit more for my services, but I also never have a vacancy. So they're really good at their job. So I'm comfortable paying that 10% for property management. It's really good. So what you could do is you say it's $650 a door times 2 times 12. Well, now you multiply this times 0.10. Okay, that's $130 minus $130. 1,300 minus $130. Oh fuck. That's dumb. Anyways, it's 1,700. It's $170. Or yeah, $1,170. Right. Then you minus that from your debt coverage. You're actually negative cash flowing. Typically on a duplex, you can expect to, at least in Central Texas, where I purchase my properties, my rental properties, you typically expect to see a negative cash flow between 50 to $100. So you're going to actually end up paying 180 to $100 if you put nothing down on these properties. All of my properties, I've put anywhere between, 2% to, or 0 to 2% down on some of these properties. And I've even gotten construction loans that have actually exceeded what truthfully is above 100% LTV, and I'm still cash flowing $400 a month. So right now one of them makes me $2,700 a month right now. My payment on that is $1,550. My property management expenses on that is $270. And I have my expenses are averaging about $200 a month. So after it's all said and done, I typically bring in between $700 and $2,000 a month on positive cash flow. And if you're someone like that values the principles of Robert Kiyosaki, using an asset or another liability with it that tied to an asset to cover your other assets or your other liabilities, this actually covers my monthly rent in Arizona. My monthly rent right now is about $900 after utilities. So I'm still bringing in, the way I still see it is I'm still making $100 after this is all said and done, because it pays for my housing expense, at least that one specifically. And that contributes to about 50% of the cash flow. But the only reason that's doing that right now is because rents are increasing in that particular submarket in Central Texas, because of the city that it's in actually taxes on top of the school district taxing, and because taxes have increased, rents have increased, and because rents have increased, values have increased, and because values have increased and interest rates have gone down, I was able to significantly lower my monthly payment and still have the same amortization schedule and still owe the same amount plus an additional $5,000 for reclosing or refinance fees, and was still able to make significantly more. I was originally making $150 a door at that particular property. So I was making about $400 to $500 a month in positive cash flow. But now I doubled that just because rents have increased and interest rates have dropped. And that's all that is following general inflation and our American economy battling deflation, hoping to avoid hyperinflation, which is weird. but that's what they do. Those are tools that the economists and Treasury Department at the Department of Revenue Services utilize to control our marketing capabilities, our markets performance. So yeah, when that's why I personally don't like duplexes, because you're only making 650 a door, and I've watched 7 or 8 different markets, throughout the country, that consistently show that same amount for a duplex, for a 2 bedroom, 2 bath duplex. Typically, it does, and maybe my words change. In California and Florida, it's certainly different, but in most states, I would say a good 38 out of the 50 states actually experience a 2 bedroom, 2 bath makes about $650 a door. So if you figure that's $1,300 a month for a duplex. Well, a fourplex right now, depending on the size, your 3 bedroom, 2 baths on average make about $750 a door. Your 2 bedrooms make about $650 a door. So if you have 3 2 bedrooms and you're making $650 a door times 3 plus the 750, well, that's $2,700. That's how much I'm making right now, just because I have 3 2 bedroom 2 baths, and then I have 1 3 bedroom 2 bath, and because of that, I'm able to make $2,700 a month in gross income. Now, if I experience a 1,550 a month mortgage, and then I lose $270 um, for that, and then maybe I have a bad month where I'm experiencing expenses, divide that by 4, I'm still making $170 a door. I mean, that's still a lot of money. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money, right? So that's why I prefer fourplexes, because I can, if I have a lot of high value properties and a good property manager, and there's a ton of people that live in that town that need housing or that rent, it really is considered affordable housing, because it's super cheap. There's not a lot of people I don't know that can't spend $650 to make their rent. I have yet to meet someone that cannot afford that. Even on unemployment right now, you're making $2,400 a month because of COVID-19. You can still afford a $650 a month payment. And these are nice duplexes. I spend at least $10,000 a door, improving things like, duct work, water heaters, plumbing, electrical. I usually repaint, refloor, recarpet. I retexture the countertops or resurface the tubs. I mean, I change all the fixtures. So I make these homes really nice and really affordable and really pretty for people to stay in. I would not stay in something. I would not rent something I personally would not stay in. And that's just how I see it. That's how I've always managed my real estate, and that's how I'm going to continue to manage my real estate, because I feel like that provides the highest yield in return for my own investments. And I consistently see a trend. I'll have a property, I'll have a tenant leave on the 30th of April, and then it's rented out on the 6th of May, and that is consistently a trend that I experience all year. And the great thing about renting something out on the 6th is you don't really see a significant amount of vacancy. So let's say that, for instance, I have one of my 3 bedroom that was vacant the vacant for 6 out of the 30 days that were in the month, right? So that's my daily rate for rent on a property. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that by the 24 days that they actually stayed there. Well, I'm still making a substantial amount of money. It's $520 plus the money that I was already making a month from the other 3 units, minus 650 plus 750. I mean, that's how much I'm making a month, just because I had a 6-day vacancy, which isn't that bad. I mean, that's still, after you take into consideration that my mortgage is $1,450 minus the $2,560 for monthly rent. times that by -1. That's annoying. Plus 1 times -1. There you go. Divide. Oh, it's dumb. Whatever. It's a good amount of money. Point is, it's a good amount of money. I mean, that's just how I do it, and that's one of the reasons why it's so important to find your retirement number. And the reason I use 1.03% is very specific to just my personal preference. The average rate for the average inflation rate right now, and I could show you that just by doing a quick Google search. Merkin inflation rate 2021. The average inflation rate right now is 1.4%. So what I typically do is I looked at the historical. The historical rate is actually averaged out to be 140. It's 1.4%. So I think the highest it's ever been historically was at like, it was like, yeah, back in the 40s because of the Great Depression was like 20%. So I kind of take the aggregate or the average unemployment rate and kind of historically what it's been since the 80s or the 60s, because that I feel like that's the best way to kind of compare it, is looking at the historical trend, because our market, the way our market is now, is completely different from the industrial era, where I would say from the early 20s to the 60s was predominantly industrialized. You know, people had we're not reliant on their 401ks or IRAs or their own independent ability to invest in themselves and whatever stocks they wanted to invest in. Not everybody had to be a Warren Buffett to retire. A lot of companies had retirement plans, and I forgot what else they're called because they don't exist anymore. But pensions. A lot of people had pensions, which isn't a thing anymore. So if you figure the average right now is about 1.5%, and that's kind of in the historical average. What I like to do is multiply that truthfully by I like to multiply that by 2, and then I just add that, and then I figure I want to retire by the time I'm 50. I want to retire 10 to 15 years earlier than my father did, and he's retiring at 65. So that puts me in my 40s, mid 40s. I'm still young enough to do things that I want to do, but not old enough to do what I don't want to do. So that's predominantly why I personally like to to put 1.03%. So the 1.1 is just like I said, you're multiplying 42 times 1 to get itself, and then you're adding the inflation rate or whatever growth rate is of, for instance, 3%, and then you're squaring it, or you're taking it to the power of whatever year you want to retire from. So, and the reason you do that, again, is simply to find out what your value is on the money you have today, what it will be later. So you're literally finding the future value of your current dollars. So if I had a dollar today, in 20 years, what would it be worth at 3% growth rate? So a dollar today times 1.03 in 20 years. It would be $1.80, assuming that we experience an inflation rate. And that's typical growth of how the American dollar works. Obviously things are different. Things are different from country to country. You can go to another country like Manzanito in Mexico, or even Zewaneo in Mexico, or you could probably even go to Amsterdam, to be truthfully honest, or hell, even Korea or China. I mean, you could take the American dollar that's, you know, significantly stronger than like the Australian dollar, for instance, and you could have this passive income that I have, and you could technically live, you know, I think the average rent compared to the American dollar, last I checked, like a little over a year ago, the Australian dollar was like 80 cents compared to the American dollar. So I would be able to buy significantly more. In addition to that, their rent structure is different than America's, so it's a lot cheaper to buy housing. So that's just one thing to take into consideration when you're hitting retirement. How much money, especially if you're in real estate or you do stocks or you own a business, like how much passive income do you need to cover the current bills you have and be able to retire? And that's just how I've personally found it. And that's the goal that I'm reaching. I'm not looking at, okay, I need $42,000 or $30,000 to retire. No, I'm looking at that 20-year goal from now. My money needs to be what I need it to be in 20 years from now in order to be retiring. And $76,000 a year is what I need to make annually in my passive income in order to safely retire and consistently see a trend of growth. And if I reach that goal, I reach that goal. If I don't, well, then I need to fucking reach it. So that's just something to take into consideration too. And like moving somewhere else, it's a lot cheaper, where the American dollar goes a lot further. So that's basically what I wanted to talk to you about today. Um, it's basically just going over, you know, how to extend the American dollar and how to meet your retirement goals. That's pretty much it for this video. So if you have any questions or concerns, comment below.